What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of VR365. What is going on? I am live with Gary Reckoner VR. Major changes going on in his background room. He is undergoing Project Immersion, creating a brand new VR space. Gary, what is up? How's it going back there?
Yes, it's good. I'm doing okay. Thanks for having me on your show today, Anthony. Yeah, it's pretty good. Project Immersion, was that something Tribal Instincts? Is that what you
Yeah, do
you
you
mentioned a
remember
while ago?
that? Do
Yeah,
you remember that
yeah,
Project Immersion? That was funny. I just loved the name of it, like Project Immersion. Yeah, let's just get merged in there.
yeah. I used to watch a lot of Tribal Instinct stuff when because he got the Vive before anybody else. He won a competition, I think, didn't he? So yeah, I used to watch that all the time. Yeah,
Yeah, and he like bought like a new house or something like halfway through doing his various shows, right? And he had this
yeah,
like giant room that he was going to like green screen the entire room and just talk about a freaking dedicated VR room. Like he's
yeah.
like way better than even like this is a pretty big room. I am lucky. I got a pretty goddamn big space right here. I could do pretty good room scale right there. But man, his was even huger, and it was like this like split roof and all that. But but yeah. So what are you actually doing over there? Like, what is this mission going to accomplish for you?
I don't know in the end. So basically, what's happening is before, when we had this on, like I was in here on VR Roundtable, in the background, you'll see that you'll notice on those shows that I had a wall there previously with a door in, and that was like an extra little storage area that I had behind that door. It was like for the garden stuff, like the lawnmower and stuff like that. So what I've done over the past few months, I've been building like a lean-to shed next to my house, and all of that stuff has gone into there. And the reason I've done this really is because my wife wanted a treadmill. Well, I sort of wanted one as well, so we've sort of bought one together, but it's mainly for my wife. That's really what it is. So yeah, you can see the treadmill that we've got there. But basically, the end result is going to be that I'm going to probably end up with around about a meter extra of VR space, which is probably less significant in this day and age as it was back in 2016 because there's not as much room scale. But it's always nice to have a little bit of extra room for your VR space anyway. So that's what's happening at the moment. I've still got plenty to do. I've got to put a new floor down, put the ceiling up, and yeah, then sort of shelve everywhere as well to get all my stuff in here. But I want to keep things relatively sparse. I don't want too much clutter in here as well. So yeah, when we first, the reason I'm doing this as well is because when we first moved into this house, I had to just make this room as quickly as possible in order, because this is actually my garage. It's not a room in the house. I had to do this as quickly as possible in order to just get stuff in here. Now I wanted to do it properly, so I'm sort of taking a step back, taking my time doing it, and just getting a decent room for all my stuff. Really, that's what's happening, and hopefully only a couple of more weeks until it's finished.
Yeah, have you ever noticed though that I mean I don't know if you're similar to me, but like you'll start various projects, you get into this project and it's like, okay, now I'm into this thing and now I'm into that thing. Now I'm building this special computer that has all these like classic arcade games, like an arcade cabinet. People get involved in all these different things, right? And so the room for you is probably like this project that you're really into right now.
It is, yeah, but it's funny you mentioned the arcade cabinet because that's going to be a little project that I do after this is finished. I want around next to the treadmill. Basically, I'm going to be building an arcade cabinet as well, so that will take up a little bit of room. But other than that, I'm excited to get back into VR, like PC VR, once this room's finished. That's really my goal at the moment. But yeah, I understand because there's so many little things. Since we finished VR Roundtable, I've been doing little projects around the house, and then this shed, and now this room, and I've got other things to do. Even when this is finished, I've got other things to do around the house as well. So yeah, it's been a busy time, honestly. Which by not doing VR Roundtable, it sort of helped me out a little bit to get these things done.
Yeah, you talked really quickly there about being excited about, PC VR again and trying some more PC VR. Dude, it is March 1st today, and that means that Half-Life Alex is 20 2 days away. Basically, tomorrow, Monday, right? So it's 3 weeks from tomorrow. 3 weeks from tomorrow, we will have Half-Life Alex. Gary, do you have several days off work, or are you just gonna are you just gonna play? I mean, Monday's kind of a weird day for this to arrive, right?
Yeah, I don't have any days booked off work, but I will be trying it on that first day, of course. I will, yeah. So that's my main thing. I want to get this room finished in time for that, getting my Valve Index set up again. I did actually RMA the controllers as well, because I don't know if anybody remembers when I was on VR Roundtable, I was talking about the controllers, and I sort of submitted an RMA, but I never actually sent them back when I first got the Valve Index. So with Half-Life Alex coming up, and I knew I wasn't going to be using the Index for a while, I thought I'll send them off, and I've now got the replacement controllers. They click fine, they work in all directions and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I just want to get the room finished in time for Half-Life Alex, and I'll be playing it. I don't know if I'm going to rush through it. I'm certainly not taking any days off work, but I'll probably be playing it a fair amount that first week. Are you taking any time off work,
You
Anthony,
know what's
to
so
play it at all?
dumb, Gary? Check this out. So, remember this thing called GDC that was going to happen?
Yeah.
Okay, so I took Monday, no, I took Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of that GDC week. I took that off because I thought I was going to be going to GDC. I knew I was going to be there Wednesday and Thursday. I was unsure about if I'd try to do Friday or not. And those are the 3 days before the Monday where this freaking game comes out. And now there's no GDC. So I think what I'm going to try to do is try to move my 3 days into the Half-Life Alex week, and give myself 3 days to enjoy this game kind of a bit. So might try to do that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the game. It's weird though. I got to be honest, Gary. I haven't thought about this game very much, and it's almost surreal that it is so close, because I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about this game every day and they're like, yeah, I can't wait, oh my god, this is going to be amazing. I've kind of forgotten about this game over the last, I mean, I know it's there and people keep reminding you, but it's I quickly forget about it.
Yeah, I'm surprised at that, because there's not a lot else that's really coming out at the moment that I'm seeing. I'm seeing the odd thing that's coming out, and I suppose the focus for me, especially because I'm not playing too much PC VR at the moment, I'm just sort of focused on Half-Life Alex. That's all really I am thinking about. But there's not been too much that's really got me excited in terms of releases at the moment, unfortunately. But yeah, there is some games that I do want to get back into when I get my VR set up. But these are sort of games that people probably, in terms of the VR community, people have already sort of been through and spoken about to death anyway, like Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners, and that kind of stuff,
Oh my
really.
god. So really quick about Walking Dead Saints and Sinners is you've barely touched that game. Did you get a chance to play it at all, or what is your thoughts at all on it?
Oh, very quickly. So it was the day before I was going to be removing everything from this room, so I didn't have a lot of time with it. But I thought I've got to go in there and give it a try, and I was really impressed with it, just immediately really impressed with it, and I thought it was great. There's a few things like with Boneworks in a similar way, and I sort of posted something on Twitter about this, how I'm not a huge fan of these inverse kinematics in terms of representing a body at the moment. And in The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, they only sort of represent the arms. They don't necessarily represent a full body, I don't believe. And even that is enough to, it's not bad necessarily, but it just, when things don't necessarily work perfectly, it does take me out of that of that moment when I'm trying these things. And in Boneworks, it was a big deal. I didn't like the inverse kinematics in Boneworks. And do you think, here's a question for you, Anthony, because I know you like Boneworks, and I do too. I don't think it's bad at all. But with respect to the inverse kinematics, I wonder if, would that game lose a lot by just having an option to remove the arms, remove the body, and just play with these floating hands in some way? Would the game mechanically work differently? Because I don't necessarily think it would,
Well,
but
no, here's the thing though. Every one of the things that everybody complains about with Boneworks is climbing. And they say that the climbing is so janky. And I think a lot of the reason people think the climbing is janky in Boneworks is because Boneworks is one of the few games ever, period, where your physical arm is taking up actual space and colliding with shit. And so when people are climbing in VR, it's like they're just like almost reaching their arm right through the ladder, and that's not working in Boneworks. I found, like, when I play Boneworks and I'm climbing up something, I take my hand back like this, bring it up around, I'm seeing my arms, and then my arms are not colliding with anything. Is it awkward? Is it weird to be like going like, like, as you're climbing? Yeah, it's awkward and silly, but I like the physics of Boneworks. As far as like the inverse kinematics being weird or causing, I mean, it's sometimes, yeah, the arms are a little bit off, or they're like in Boneworks, they're like super extended and coming out quite a bit. One of the things I've noticed though with inverse kinematics in general is the movement of your wrist and up to your elbow, that can be done well in VR. And why doesn't everybody at least bare minimum just give me elbow cut off, and just have the arm fade into oblivion at the elbow? Because that's accurate. We've learned how to do that.
Yeah, it's that would be good enough in some ways. I think like the inverse kinematics in Walking Dead Saints and Sinners is not terrible, but whenever I'm given this option of having these arms, I find it difficult not to just test it and break it. It's easy to break it and for it to not match up. That's probably like more on me than the game, to be honest. But in Boneworks, it was nothing really felt right in terms of the inverse kinematics in Boneworks, aside from the game, because I think the game does a lot right, and I like that the developers are pushing in that direction. But the inverse kinematics, until we've got a point where we've got more points of tracking and things work more, at least more perfectly than they do now, then I'm happy just to have floating hands. And Half-Life Alex has gone down that route, which I'm sort of relieved about.
Yeah, I think it's just a personal preference thing. Maybe, yeah, we
Yeah.
just need more options. We do need more options. Real quick though, just because I happen to have this trailer running with Walking Dead, the brief amount of time that you were in that game, Gary, I mean, did you? Because the number one thing that I love about this game is just a simple 10-second interaction with a zombie, just grabbing the head. It does get old after a while, right? But
Mm.
different ways of taking your dagger or your screwdriver or whatever it is, and just that visceral, just right. And there is a bit of a stress relief with this game. Like, I think it's, if you want a
Yeah.
quick burst of stress relief, you just jack a couple zombies in the head, right?
Yeah, they've done a great job with that. Absolutely, they've done a great job with that. I think that's one of the things because you could look at somebody playing this. Like if somebody from my family came around and watched me playing this game and just could see what I'm doing on a monitor, and they had no idea about gaming or just playing VR, and they'd think, this guy's a complete psychopath. But there is a certain amount of satisfaction in doing this in this game, and I'm still, because I'm so early on, I've not got past that point where I think this is getting old or anything like that at the moment. And I know the game gets a little bit repetitive, or so I've heard anyway later on.
Yeah, yeah, it absolutely does after a while. Let's see here. I was looking for something else. Well, you know what? Why don't we actually get into the actual interview here? Because I do have some very specific questions that I did want to hit you up with, and actually these are questions that I really want to hit up with pretty much almost anybody that I have on this show that has been in the VR gaming world and has experienced VR hardware and kind of where they're at with this stuff. And so I have two major questions. Let me go ahead and start off the first big question. This is the key question, Gary. Has VR hardware hit a baseline? Are we at a baseline level? Is the hardware good enough where now it's on software, now it's on content? The hardware is there. The hardware is no longer the issue. Or you could say, you know what? We're not at a baseline. we might be close, but we are not at a baseline. What is your thoughts on this, Gary? Because there's differing opinions out there on this one.
Yeah, and I think because I watch a lot of VR content that goes up on YouTube and this kind of stuff, and people talk about the content that's out there all the time, which is of course the right thing to do. But there's a couple of ways I consider this question, and the first one is, as a VR enthusiast, all most people want that are already invested within that ecosystem of virtual reality is bigger, better content, more content even, as long as it's going down the right way. So in terms of like already being invested within VR, I think the baseline probably is there. But if we're talking about mass adoption, I think it's sort of laughable to suggest it's even close to being a baseline for what most people will want from VR. I think we need it to be far less friction as it is now. And even like you look at something like PSVR, which is one of the most successful VR systems at the moment. And even that, people constantly complain about the fact when I listen to all these mainstream gaming media podcasts, they talk about how they love their PSVR, but they say they hardly ever use it because it's a hassle to set up, it's a hassle to get into, and this kind of stuff. So having more content on the PSVR is one thing, but if they're still having this problem of getting in and out of the VR system, it's still a hurdle,
That's
which is probably not.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree with you on this because this is what some people don't really think. People are saying it's a software problem. It's a software problem. But then if it's really the software problem, think of all the people that got a Rift in the last couple of years. They were PC gamers, they were flat gamers, but they were like, you know what? I'm going to try this VR thing. They got a Rift, and for the first couple of months, they really enjoyed it. And they were playing Robo Recall and they were playing Fallout 4 VR, and they were playing some of these early VR games and but they were enjoying it. But then after a while, it just like they got tired of the whole rigmarole, and then it ended up in their closet. And I always heard these stories of people who actually got VR, used it, and they're like, man, I haven't played VR in 6 months, it's just sitting in my closet. Doesn't that say that maybe we do need, because maybe we're in the Atari 2600 level, ColecoVision, Intellivision, and we haven't gotten to the Nintendo Entertainment System, which is like this new baseline of, like, I felt like when you got to the Nintendo Entertainment System, because people would try the Atari and they'd be like, "Oh, these are just little blocks," Do we is
Yeah.
that where we need to go?
Well, yeah, I mean that's one analogy, and it's probably a good one. Another one that I often think about with this kind of stuff is the iPhone. I'm going to go back to the iPhone yet again. So I think that the iPhone came out at a time where it did hit the baseline in the right way. We had smartphones for a few years before the iPhone came out, and people did use them like the BlackBerry and other smartphones, full screen smartphones in some ways, just before the iPhone came out, and they used them, but they were people that were really invested within that technology. It wasn't a mainstream thing. People wanted a phone that would receive their emails and get onto the internet in some manner of way, and that's why people were investing in these phones. It wasn't until the iPhone came out that it just worked in the way that the mainstream general public, first of all, wanted, but also expected, more importantly. And I don't think we've got to that point with VR headsets at the moment. Oculus Quest is the closest that I can point to for a mainstream point of view. And I do want to just acknowledge and reiterate a point that for me as a VR enthusiast, really all I want for my Valve Index is more content, is better content. But taking a step out of that, I think it's got a long way to go before we hit the baseline that most people will expect from VR.
Yeah, yeah, it's we definitely have some work to do, I think, in a lot of categories. Especially, I mean, you were talking about PlayStation VR there. That's a question unto itself. But first, let's get into now this is the most important question. I got to ask you, are we at a baseline yet? And you kind of said, well, we kind of are, but we kind of aren't. So let's just say that we're not, period. And let's just say that there's a key feature for next gen VR that will take us over that next plateau, and it'll take VR over the top. One key feature. Now, I know if you're anything like me, you want to pick about 9 of these things. I think I have 11 of them listed out here. But I'm saying no, you've got to say that only one of these. Like if you were the head of HTC or Oculus or some company and you're like, you know what? We've got to pick one of these features and we've got to go all in on it because it is the key factor. We've got resolution. We've got field of view, comfort and weight, which has been popular with shatters. We've got eye tracking and dynamic foveated rendering combined. We've got wireless. We've got play space reskinning understanding, which is one of my favorite. And I don't know if it actually really works the way some companies postulate. We've got full body tracking, next gen AR pass through, built-in 5G modem, maybe that's underrated with edge computing capabilities, facial tracking, advanced avatars. Remember the faces, Gary? You know those faces that the advanced Facebook stuff?
Yeah.
That for multiplayer and for social, I can't imagine anything bigger than that almost, right?
Yeah, no, that makes sense for that specific thing. Yeah, I agree.
We've also got varifocal lenses, and so I think that's all of them. And so we've got 11 major things there, and I'm sure we're missing many. In fact, me and Gary actually, right before the episode started, I said, well, I don't have next gen controller on here at all. I'm kind of okay with like the Oculus Touch original controller or say the Valve Index controllers. The idea of going to gloves, and that's a whole ball of wax as well. But let's forget about the controls for a second, Gary. On this list here, what is the next gen feature? Or if you want to say, you know what, controls are the next gen feature, you can go with a wild card. Go ahead. What do you think?
So next gen VR, I look at this for a point of view like often when I look at like Reddit and stuff like this, when people talk about what they want from next gen VR headset, they look at it like the next gen is the end goal. It's like I've tried VR and I think it's good, but immediately everybody that tries it can see all these problems and they want all these things. So they'll say next gen VR has to have wider field of view, more resolution, better comfort, small. It's got to be like glasses. And I think what we're going to see is incremental differences, incremental changes within generations. And I don't know necessarily if we're going to have like a clear defining line for next gen VR, especially on PC VR. I think we're going to see headsets coming out that are just incrementally, advancing in certain ways. But for me, I suppose the number one thing, just take the question for what it is, and the number one thing is friction. Okay, so the next generation VR needs to have less friction, which I suppose comes into comfort and weight. It's a little bit of a boring answer, isn't it? But yeah.
No, comfort, weight. I'm telling Gary, comfort, weight is that's been the favorite from like people that I've seen. Comfort, weight is what they really rally around.
Yeah. But if I'm talking about friction as well, I wonder, like wireless could be brought into that as well. PSVR 2, for example, and that's where I do see a clear line between generations because PSVR 1, when they bring out PSVR 2, there will be a clear line between that generation. So I think on consoles, there will be a clear line between generation. On standalone Oculus Quest, there'll be a clear line between generations. I don't know if there'll be a clear line between generations on PC VR necessarily, but with all of this stuff, I think friction of getting in and out of VR in order to get the mainstream, again, I'm going back to the fact that the mass adoption of VR needs to be less friction, and that comes under comfort, weight, wireless PSVR 2, if they can do it wirelessly, then
Size as well,
that would be huge.
probably.
Yeah, form factor, size, and yeah, all of that stuff, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's an expensive problem though. It's a complicated, expensive problem when you're talking about friction because right now the VR headsets that we have right now are roughly 500 grams, 450 grams, this type of right. So if we want to get the weight down where it's like more comfortable on our face, it's not as irritating, you're probably going to damn near have to chop that in half. You're talking like 250 grams. And like those Panasonic goggles, those Willy Wonka goggles that we saw at CES, I believe those were like 190 grams. So that's kind of that idea, but then you're losing so many other things, like the field of view on those things is down to like 70 degrees and stuff, and so you're so like I understand the friction. One of the things that I think could be handled with via friction is like putting a VR headset on, and putting a headset on and it being dark and waiting for things to load up. That's kind of a friction as well. Imagine if you took like, because if you're
Mm.
giving a VR headset to your mom or to your uncle, you don't want him to put it on and it's like dark, he doesn't know what's going on, okay, you know what I mean, you would like them to put it on their head, and honestly what I'd like is you put it on their head, bam, they're instantly seeing a full color background of the actual place that they're in, and then maybe there's like a flashing icon that says enter VR, and their hands are like their hands are tracked, and then they could just go bam and then boom, enter VR. That would, do you think that would alleviate just a little bit of friction if every headset just did that immediately upon entering it?
Yeah, and yeah, I do. And but I also think like with the Oculus Quest in terms of friction, it's very easy for people to get that headset. Just general like friends and family that I brought around. It's very easy for them to understand that this is a headset that they could buy and get into and out of very quickly. I don't think, going back to your previous question about the baseline, I don't think the Quest is at the baseline for mass adoption or anything like that. But I think it's getting closer and it's doing the things that a lot of people will expect, at least mainstream people will expect from VR. They want it to be easy and to just work. Same as the iPhone worked when that first came out. I think we need that moment with VR.
The one thing though, speaking of the Quest, because I know you've been playing a little bit more of the Quest recently because of what's going on with your room there. Um, they did nail a number of things though, from the standpoint that like just turning it on and going from it being completely off to getting into it pretty freaking snappy. There's not a lot of delays that are happening with a lot of Quest stuff, I've noticed as much. Now, some of the games you can tell they are overworking that Snapdragon 835, and sometimes it's struggling, to keep up with some of the games. But like, do you think on a Quest 2, this idea that this theory I have where, do you think we'll hit full color? Do you think we'll be at full color? Do you think Facebook will add a lot of, do you think they'll add some AR into a Quest 2?
Uh, Possibly, yeah. I mean, it's entirely possible because that they do want to definitely head in that direction. AR is definitely on their list of things to go through and to try and. They've spoken about this before, like with Mark Zuckerberg, and in the History of Everything, the book. Um, they were saying that they missed out on mobile phones and they don't want to miss out on VR or AR or whatever the next thing is. And I think they're absolutely adamant on that. They are doing a lot of things with VR at the moment, but they've mentioned AR and they're increasingly mentioning AR. So it probably does make sense that they could do like a stopgap. I've never been one who thinks that, like, whenever I try the pass through on the Quest at the moment, I see it as just a functional thing. I've never been one of these people that see it as anything that could be used for anything like gaming, or like just have that pass through and then project things on top of that in its current form. But I do think that's a possibility if they have a system in place where they do get these really high definition, ultra low latency cameras and pass through, then that could become an option. But I don't know if the technology is really there to do that in the way that most people would expect at the
But
moment.
wait, Gary, Qualcomm is showing us right here. It's working beautifully fine. You can go to your backyard and all of a sudden you're in a nightclub and you're inside your house, your stairs turn into vanishing realms right before your eyes. Like, I mean, just looking at this footage here though, what Qualcomm is talking about, so recently they did announce this new standard that they have. It's the XR2 5G reference design. And this is just their prototype. And then they're working with supposedly up to like 5 different OEM companies. At first, I was super excited and really into this thing because I thought it might be a little bit consumer oriented. But the way I understand it, this is really for like BMW dealerships. It's not really for end-level consumers. Maybe in 2022 it trickles down, but here's the 3D reconstruction, semantic segmentation, automatic room mapping. You too, Gary, can live in vanishing realms. Your room back there could just completely turn into vanishing realms. Did you see that video that one guy did where he made it himself with photogrammetry, but then he was running it in the Oculus Quest, and it was like his apartment, but he made a virtual version, and he was like sitting on the
Yeah,
sofa. Remember that? Okay, so what
yeah.
Qualcomm is saying here is that they're going to be able to do that in real time. That you don't have to do photogrammetry. It's just going to look around and be like, oh, that's a staircase, that's a table, that's a sofa, and brrr. Is it going to happen?
Well, the thing is with this reference design as well, and I think you've probably mentioned this on your show. This reference design is people that like the manufacturers that are going to make this thing are probably going to take a few different aspects of this reference design and make their own headset, hopefully. But the reference design is pretty impressive when you look at it on paper. Whether it can do what we're seeing here in this video or not is, I mean, this little kid, he's wearing just glasses, more or less. So this is a long way off what they're showing here. It's the dream. It's the dream that a lot of people that are enthusiastic about AR want, but I'm not sure this is anything to get excited about in the near term. And the XR2 headset that is like the reference design itself that is going to be used for certain things is probably going to be like, a pretty high spec piece of technology. But yeah, it's difficult to get excited about this kind of stuff when we're not going to get our hands on it and we don't really know the use cases for it or how widely available. But also the store, like the store is one of the most important things as well, which is all up in the air.
Could you imagine though, you can just go out into your backyard in broad daylight, and it's
Yeah,
tracking everything perfectly and it completely maps. Here she is. She's in the backyard dancing around all of a sudden in the world's best nightclub. And but you know what, the
yeah,
Facebook
can't be done.
the Facebook avatar dream, right? See these people dancing around there like holograms. The Facebook avatar dream, you combine that with real-time full body tracking, and all these things are communicating with each other. But let's just like dream a little dream, Gary. Is that 20 years away? Glasses that's like seriously, when is that future going to happen? If someone put a gun to your head and said, Gary, you got to predict when the glasses are going to be that small, you're going to be able to go into your backyard, the avatars are going to be that realistic, full body tracking for everybody, multiplayer.
Why are you asking me? What do I know? I've got no clue. I mean, I would love it to be like 10 years away or something like that. Or, I mean, I'd say 20 years is probably closer to the truth. But all this technology where they can block out all the light with these glasses and still have, or even block out partial light of it and have all these AR representations and stuff. The technology is just not there at the moment to do that kind of stuff, at least from what we've heard. So, yeah, I don't know, 20 years, let's say 20 years. Why
It's
not?
exciting though. It's exciting that the fact that Qualcomm is even having something like this, show up.
Yeah.
they're obviously investing a lot of money. They are working on this thing. Somebody's see, I was super excited about this, Gary, in the very beginning, because when they first talked about it, this guy Scott Stein, who is, I believe, one of the lead CNET guys, he went and tried it. But the resolution of the headsets that they tried were 2880 by 2880 per eye. And it was like this new 3K standard that they were talking about. And that's what I was excited about, because I was like, oh man, because I was hoping at least one, if they're making these screens for this thing, those screens got to end up in at least one PC VR headset, right? Did you ever get excited?
Yeah,
Did
that's
you ever
true.
get excited about like the HP Reverb or like the Pimax 8KX? What do you think about some of these more exotic headsets?
Yeah, well, the thing is, resolution is obviously it's on your list. It's on your list of Gen 2 sort of spec sheet that most people will want, and resolution is a big one. Resolution is, of course, something that people want. Can I just ask you, Anthony, what on this? Like, what is your number one thing? Is it resolution? Because I hear you talk about resolution a lot with this stuff. Do you think resolution's that big a deal?
Man, hold on. Let me go back to that list again. I got to take a look at it again. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for me, actually, no, you know what? Number one for me, here's my suggestion to the entire VR gaming industry, but this would never freaking fly. But my suggestion is take graphics back to a effing ancient level. Let's go to the most simplistic graphics possible so that we can take care of all the other issues. Because what I want, I think we got to start with FOV. For me, FOV is the most important thing here, because I think an FOV puts you into a bigger FOV puts you into the world more, and it makes the illusion more convincing, I think. And so, but I want maximum FOV. I want 220 degrees, so that and verticality and wide, where I don't even know what kind of device this would be. It would have to be like the screens would have to curl around your eyes, or it'd have to be some kind of like almost like a helmet thing where the entire helmet is your screen. I don't know exactly how
Yeah.
they do that.
Have you have you tried the Pimax
No, still
ever?
never,
No,
never.
no. Because I'm just wondering, some people, because I had a problem with the distortion, but I know that kind of stuff's getting better. I keep hearing about how they're sort of rectifying these profiles, these distortion profiles, and making it work better for more people. And the Pimax did have a huge field of view when I tried it. But maybe that's worth looking into, Anthony. Maybe if you could go somewhere to try a Pimax or something like that.
Yeah, well, had GDC happened, I would have tried it there, and I would have actually been
Yeah.
able to have an interview with Sweeve Ivor and be able to try. And that 8KX, like that is an exciting headset. The PPD though, like these Qualcomm, whatever these 2880 by 2880 screens that are coming out, the PPD is even higher than like the 8KX, because they're spreading that over a wider field. So like the actual pixels per degree, that's the sweet sauce, is like you want the absolute highest pixels per degree you can possibly get. I really am looking forward, Gary. I do want one of these high resolution things, because I want to see screen door just be killed dead. I want to enter an era
Mm.
where screen door does not exist anymore. Have you been playing Ghost Giant on the Oculus Quest? Because I was going to talk to you about that really quick. But like when I'm playing that, like you see these little characters, and it's a little cartoon, but at the same time I see the screen door all over the characters. Did you notice that at all when you played it?
Yeah, you can. And in the Quest, you can see the screen door in certain experiences. And yeah, I think Ghost Giant is a good example of that. It is there. But I don't get as bothered by screen door as some other people do. I know it's there. And obviously, when we get to a point where it's not there, that will be the preferable way to play these games. So yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think resolution and not having the screen door and that kind of stuff is really important too. But categorizing all of these things in order, it's difficult. I want all of them, like you said, Anthony. When you're presented with that kind of list, you want all of these things in some
For
ways.
me though, like a VR 1.5 would be getting a headset that is 2880 by 2880. It doesn't need to have any of this other crap. It doesn't need to analyze my play space, and just a standard, like if it was like a Windows mixed reality headset, but it freaking jacked it up to 2880 by 20, almost like reverbs. Now the problem with these square panels that they're making specifically for VR, Gary, I don't know if you know about this, but like the HP Reverb, the screens are 2.45 inches and they're squares, and it's 2160 by 2160 for each of them. And that appears to be what they're doing. Like on a lot of these headsets, you're starting to see the screens where the resolution is the same number on each side, because they're basically making these like new squares. The problem is the squares are small, and because they're so small, the PPD is good and all that, but the downside is that the FOV is squeezed in a little bit, and then also some people have said they can actually see the edge of the screen when they're in the headset. Like, how much of a freaking immersion breaker would that be if you coughed up the extra money for an HP Reverb because you want to play Project Cars with really good resolution?
Yeah. It's so these screens that they're using. I mean, this is part of the thing as well with resolution. We need to wait for the manufacturers to make the right kinds of screens that are going to be used in these VR headsets. And increasingly, I think there is more demand for VR headsets. As it increases, then we will get manufacturers making more bespoke screens. At the moment, they're limited to the kind of screens that they can get. And it's funny, isn't it? Like when I remember the Vive and the Rift, they had the orientation vertically on these two separate screens, so they were taller than they were wide for each eyes, is how they had the orientation. Pimax flips that, so you get the wider screens, which sort of makes sense, I suppose, because as humans, our field of view is a little bit wider than it is tall, and that makes sense. But it's funny that they're focusing, if these are sort of bespoke, made for VR screens, why they would have them square, because it doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it? I don't know, maybe it does. But as you mentioned, the problem is the field of view. They've got to be closing in the field of view with that.
Yeah. Well, making them square like that, I mean, it does result in that high resolution for that square, But yeah, I don't know. Okay, so I want to get into a different topic with you real quick here, Gary. And I've thrown Beat Saber on the screen, and you might think I want to ask you about your newfound passion with Beat Saber, but I actually want to go in a different direction, but you can also talk about that. But the direction I want to go in is Facebook. So they are starting to acquire companies now. And they started off with a really huge purchase. They acquired Beat Games, which owns the IP to Beat Saber. And so now they have that. And then they've recently acquired Sanzaru Games, developer of Asgard's Wrath, Sports Challenge VR, Ripcoil, Marvel Powers United. What do you think? Well, the first question I have is, do you think Facebook is making the right acquisitions here with these two different companies? Do you think there's other companies? Do you think maybe they should go after more indie companies? Should they go after even bigger companies on the level of Insomniac? Like, was it a mistake for them to maybe let Insomniac go?
Um, yeah, so I think from Facebook's point of view, they're making the right calls. I think Asgard's Wrath was a huge deal for the Oculus Rift platform, and of course, Beat Saber, you don't even need to be into VR to know what Beat Saber is. So that's a massive acquisition as well. I was actually surprised when I first saw the fact that Facebook had purchased Sanzari. I was surprised by almost everybody saying how this was a fantastic thing, because I mean, on the surface, I think it is a fantastic thing too. For the developer, it's great. For us as consumers, it's great, and for Facebook, it's probably great too. The only thing is, I don't want Facebook to get too powerful within the VR arena. I want another company to come in, a decent competition company to come in, and the acquisitions that they're making, they're great. I can't knock them for their business strategy in this, because I think these are the kinds of developers and the kinds of games that make sense for them to acquire at this moment in time. And really, what's the alternative? What am I asking them to do? I'm basically asking them to not acquire all these companies, give somebody else a chance in order to compete with them, which is ludicrous. Of course, I'm not saying that, but at the same time, I do worry that Facebook could be getting a little bit too powerful in this. And as much as I love my Quest, I want to see a decent, a reasonable competition headset, competitor to that headset really as well. The other thing that I've heard mentioned with this, which is a good point, I think it was on one of the other podcasts that I'll watch, one of the VR podcasts, and it might have been untested actually as well. I think they mentioned this, but they were talking about how with these acquisitions and Facebook's focus on standalone and the Quest, is that a bad thing too? Are they going to push these developers more into creating content for the Quest and ignore the PC platform, which I think is a legitimate concern as well.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, speaking to that, so you're talking about fear of a questicle. And let's talk about that for a quick second, because you know what, a game that just recently got announced, and I'm excited for this one. I'm sure you're probably excited for this one if you've like seen this trailer and heard about this. Drifter Entertainment, they're now going by the name Drifter, and of course they brought Gunheart to VR, which was pretty good for their first VR game. Didn't necessarily catch fire as much as they wanted it to catch, but if you played Gunheart, it almost had a little bit of a Halo feel, and it had a couple of different feels that were pretty good, right? And they have very talented developers there at Drifter Entertainment. Now they're going by Drifter. Then they did Robo Recall Unplugged and brought that to the Quest, and that's a pretty good job of bringing that. Now this is their new game, Lies Beneath. Okay, and so this is coming to the Quest, I believe, this month, March 31st. This hits the Oculus Quest, and then it hits Rift and Rift S on like April 14th. There it is. Quest March 31st, Rift S, April 14th. But you look at the graphics of this game, Gary, and they do a wonderful job of making it stylistic and comic book, and it's got a really unique art aesthetic. But here's the thing, we know the real reason. I mean, the real reason why a lot of these companies are going with these like interesting pixel whip kind of a style is because it translates, it scales, you know? Like that is going to scale down perfectly nicely to the Oculus Quest.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I don't see the thing when we're talking about this as well, you can talk about it from 2 points of view, where you talk about it as a VR enthusiast that is heavily invested in PC VR and you want the best experiences, but then you look at it from Facebook's point of view, and it's so easy to see their point of view with this mass adoption, and you want to get more people into VR, so standalone is the obvious way. They're acquiring these companies, and it's without doubt, I think they're going to push them to make at least versions of their game to Quest, or possibly that could be the primary platform. But yeah, you're right on this trailer. I mean, it's very stylized. It looks great anyway. But you could easily make the argument that you've just made there, Anthony, that they've done it in this way in order to keep the processing minimal so that they can put it on the Quest and that kind of stuff. The only, like I say, the only thing that concerns me a little bit with these acquisitions is we've not got a decent competitor to what Facebook are doing. It's good. I wouldn't say that I'm a fan of Facebook by any means. I'm not on Facebook anymore, or anything like that. But it's very difficult to argue with what they're doing at the moment. They're doing some really, really good stuff, and I think that's as a VR enthusiast, I like to see that on the one hand. I just don't want them to be the only thing in VR.
Yeah, I mean, do you have a worry though, like just as far as the Quest is concerned in general? Do you have any kind of a worry that the Quest is going to have too much popularity and it's going to be too successful? And then because there's definitely PC VR gamers that are out there that really have no interest whatsoever in the Quest, and if anything, the Quest is kind of like hurting them in a way, because if it becomes just ridiculously wildly successful, which it appears to be, that appears to be happening, because I know I just saw a story this company said that their sales on the Quest were more than like every other platform combined, and the game was only out for like 1 week. I forget which game this was, but it was very recently in the news. But success like that, word travels, and then all these developers are scrambling to now make Quest compatible games that'll work on Quest. They work on PC VR, and they want the game to shine on Quest because Quest is where the money is. So then Quest becomes the lead platform. So now you're designing the game around the Quest hardware capabilities, and then once you have that, then you're going to scale that up. That is what I call a questicle. And the game that we saw before, Lies Beneath. There's games like Phantom Covert Ops that's going to be coming up not too soon. All these games, we saw it with what was the game, the racing game, that kind of twisted metal like racing game that came out.
Oh yeah, Deathlap,
Deathlap.
or so was it
Yeah.
Deathlap? Yeah.
If you look at a game like Deathlap, like I played that on the Quest, I played it on the Rift very briefly on both of them, and you can tell that that game did not receive much of any. There really wasn't any kind of an upgrade for the Rift version. So developers are gonna, some of them might just be like, we don't really need to like add all these extra high-res textures to the Rift versions of these games. Is this a worry for you, or because you also enjoy the Quest, you're kind of like torn?
Yeah, I love the Quest. I think it's right for from a business point of view. It makes sense for Facebook to just continue with the Quest, and I still think we're going to get another version of the Rift. I still do believe that, but their focus is undoubtedly on Quest, and I can't really say I argue with that in some ways. All I want is for a company, Valve, they've got the Index and they are pushing this stuff, but they're not big enough on their own to compete with the level that we're getting from Facebook. And they're not big enough really to just maintain PC VR. We need other people to invest in it as well. I suppose what I'm saying is if Facebook become a standalone VR headset company and they produce titles, games for their standalone VR headsets going forward, I don't necessarily think that's terrible, but if it comes at the cost of PC VR and console VR dying, then obviously I don't want them to do that. It all depends on the way the market goes and that kind of stuff, really.
Yeah, but don't you feel like if the Quest continues to get successful, if the Quest continues to be successful, don't you feel like there's other competitors are just naturally going to enter the equation? Like there's going to be other people coming. Like for example, Sony. Do you think Sony's just going to sit around? Like if Quest, maybe not with Quest 1, but let's say Quest 2, now it's in Target. Now because Quest isn't at Target right now, which is kind of weird. I don't think you can go to Costco. There's these big stores in America. One of them is Target. It's kind of like Walmart. It's like Target and Walmart are like Pepsi and Coke. And you can go to Target and you can't buy a Quest. And then there's a store called Costco, which is like these big, you go in there and they got jars of mayonnaise this big, and everybody buys everything big there, right? And they have these packages where you buy like a PlayStation 4 and it comes with an extra controller and it's in this like big plastic thing, and tons of people shop there. I don't think you could buy a Quest there, right? But Quest 2, you might be buying these things there. And then at that point, I think if you're Sony, I think if you're Nintendo, I think if you're Microsoft, I think eventually traditional video game companies have to look at eventually the Quest is going to be a goddamn threat. Like I believe it's a threat now. But a lot of people are like, no. And it's not really a threat now. You know why? Because there's not enough availability to even buy the thing. Gary, how many sales have been lost on the Oculus? Imagine if they had unlimited supplies all last Christmas and all this early part of this year. Imagine how many more millions. Could there be like 2 million more Quest owners if they had the proper supply?
Well, they're all on back order because I know this because the the barman at my local pub, who I go now and again and I speak to, he's ordered an Oculus Quest, and he ordered it back in December, I believe, or maybe it might have been just after Christmas. But he said he was expecting to get it. I went down there like weeks ago, and he was saying he was expecting to get it delivered on Monday, and it's been pushed back, pushed back, pushed back. Now we've still not got it. It's coming in March, he says. It's coming sometime in March. But you're right. I would think that anybody that wants a Quest that badly, they will just order it, and then when it comes in stock, they'll get it delivered. But you're right. There's no doubt that they have probably lost sales on this. And it's weird, isn't it? Like, because this has come about before, like coronavirus and that kind of stuff, where even before Christmas, they were running out of stock. Why had they not made more of these things? Because they knew they must have known that they were going to shift a fair amount of these things, but the demand must have been absolutely ludicrous, really, for them not to keep
Yeah,
up.
they're well. I gotta hope. I mean, you almost gotta hope that they just simply did not have. They were unable to ramp their production as much as they would have liked to. Like maybe they just didn't have enough contracts with enough factories. What you gotta hope
Yeah.
that it's that, because if it actually was someone at Facebook that was like, no, we don't want to make too many. Oh my God, that person miscalculated like you wouldn't
They're not
believe.
there anymore.
Yeah, shit.
I was just going to ask you as well, something, because when you were talking there about that last thing, about like people coming in to be competitors to Quest, don't you think that it's a weird thing that Sony, because the PSVR tethered to the PS4 made sense at the time, but to me, increasingly, it sort of made sense for them to make a PSVR 2 almost standalone like the Quest. They must have seen the success of Quest and thought, without the need to make a wireless tether to the PS5, they can just produce a standalone thing like the Vita or something like that. And that, to me, is sort of increasingly making sense when I look at what Sony are trying to do with VR. What do you think about that? Is that
Yeah, that's a podcast unto itself right there, straight up. Because, dude, Sony, they're screwed either way. Like they're I don't know how they get out of this situation, because they have a major threat that is the Oculus Quest is a threat. I don't give a damn what anybody says. If you're in the video game market, the Oculus Quest is a threat. Now, it might be a very tiny, insignificant threat right now, but you know what? Tiny, insignificant threats can get bigger and bigger. And before you know it, it's out of control and you're so far behind and you're struggling to catch up. So Sony has to be aware that there will be a Quest 2. It'll be even better. It'll be even more capable. They'll have learned even more things. They'll have an even bigger library. Sony is aware of this. They got to be. And then they've got the whole PlayStation 5 thing, and they've got the accessory to PlayStation 5 of a PSVR 2. So, yeah, I mean, when you think about it right now, you would think, okay, it's got to be a hybrid. It's got to do both. And maybe they could sell a cheaper version that works with PlayStation 5 and doesn't have whatever XR1 inside it to be a high. Dude, I don't know. I have no idea. They are in a tough spot, man. But you know what? I'd love to do a podcast with like a whole bunch of PSVR people where we just like almost like go into a sweat room and figure this thing out, because I don't know what Sony's going to do, man. There's a million different ways they can go, and wherever they go, they're going to piss somebody off royally, because or they're going to miss, or they're going to have to try to have two products. They're going to try to have a PlayStation VR 2 and then also eventually a Quest competitor, which is like their
mm.
PSVR Vita or whatever.
The only reason I'm asking is because mainly because I don't see Sony bringing out a PSVR 2 for the PS5 that needs to have a cable. I think that's like getting rid of that cable, especially for console VR, is going to be a huge thing. And if they've seen the reception of the Quest and knowing that they can do this thing, it's technically possible to do this. It just seems to make a lot of sense for Sony to go down that path. As much as, the PS5 is going to be a lot more capable, and you're going to get better experiences on that. I think the cable, and this probably goes back to what Phil Spencer says, I don't really want to agree with him, but the living room VR probably needs to not have a wire, really.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that as well. Living room VR cannot have a wire. The thing is, these companies, what they're going to have to figure out is the wireless transmission from the console. Like okay, so the VR headset needs to be within 15 feet or 20 feet of the console, right? And then it's wirely transmitting that signal. But the key is to not have a loss in visual information and to have almost no latency. And so far, what have we seen with this? We've seen some different wireless adapters that people have, and they're incredibly expensive, like $300. And you see I don't know, man. It's a complicated problem because they can't. If they put the actual chips and make it a real standalone, well, it ain't playing. It can't even play PlayStation VR One stuff. They would have to convert Astrobot. It'd be like converting Astrobot to a slightly better Quest. So it's a complicated ordeal. All right. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get into some Ghost Giant discussion. Yeah, so we've both been playing Ghost Giant on the Oculus Quest. Let me go ahead and grab the trailer for that. And so, Gary, why don't you talk about first of all, actually, the PlayStation VR version? Did you play this at all on PlayStation VR, even if it was just for a brief amount of time?
Yeah, no, I played through it
Oh,
all
okay.
on PSVR. Yeah, well, I sort of swapping between myself and my daughter. We sort of swapped doing scenes between us. But yeah, I played through the whole lot. So going into it on the Quest was a good comparison, really. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. What did you think? How did you think the translation came through?
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I think it's a better experience on Quest, in all honesty. The problem is with the PSVR is this thing where you can't really turn around. You can do sort of 180 degree movements. You can turn 90 degrees either way, but you can't lose line of sight with the camera. And also, even when you turn 90 degrees to the side and you're using motion controllers, they can obscure each other and they don't react in the right way. So I think really the graphics look great on the Quest. Probably not quite up to the standard of the PSVR, but they're very close. And the fact that the tracking is just so much better on the Quest is the biggest thing, really. And that's I think that's probably the true for most games that have been translated from PSVR to Quest. The motion controller tracking is just better on the Quest, and that makes all the difference in games like Ghost Giant and plenty of others as well, really.
Yeah, it's why that if somebody was like, "Hey, man, I've got a PlayStation 4. I can buy a PlayStation VR package, or should I just put that money at a Quest?" I might tell them maybe get because I think Quest. See, the thing about a Quest is you create a little volumetric cube and it's tracking you in that cube. It's full 360, it's full room scale. The graphics are watered down. Yeah, the graphics are watered down, but you take a game like Ghost Giant and the watering down is so minimal that you really have to struggle to try to see differences. Now, a little bit earlier in today's episode, we did mention screen door effect. I was playing this just last night, I think, actually, and I did notice like shimmering and stuff on like edges of things in the world. But this is a cartoon, and it comes to life, and it's almost less of a game, really. It's almost more story than game. I mean, there's puzzle, but it's really more about the story, and it's more about the voice work of Lewis, the main character. Like, he is the freaking linchpin to this whole thing. If you like Ghost Giant, you probably fall in love with Lewis and this little tale that he's going on. And you're going to all these different dioramas. And, dude, just imagine when freaking Disney gets a hold of this shit, or Pixar, when they realize, somebody's going to realize we can make a living cartoon that wraps around you and is just incredible. I mean, it's going to be amazing.
Mm. Yeah, I think that with Ghost Giant, when I played through it originally, I liked the story, it deals, people have said this numerous times, it's got like this mental health thing that it goes through, but it's quite subtle for the most part. And my daughter, obviously this went straight over her head. She just enjoyed it for what it is on the surface, really, like a cutesy little puzzle game. And you can enjoy it on that level. And I think that's part of the genius of this game as well, where you can enjoy it on that level and not even worry about the narrative. You can just go through these nicely rendered scenes and just enjoy it as a puzzle game. And that's how I enjoy it. People are going to pick me up on how I say puzzle now, aren't they? That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, no, it's charming. Did you ever were there any puzzles where you were like stuck, like you almost wanted to go to the internet or something, or were you able to work through them?
I worked through them all, but there were a couple of times which I was stuck on a few scenes for longer than you would probably expect. And my daughter, when we played through this on PSVR, because the advantage of PSVR, I suppose, is that you can see it on the TV. The Quest streaming kind of thing, it doesn't really work too well. So I don't really dabble with that, but the advantage with PSVR, you can see it on the TV. So if she gets stuck in a certain puzzle, then I can help her out and that kind of stuff. But yeah, there were a couple of times where I got stuck in certain scenes for longer than I probably should have. But there's nothing too taxing, is there, really, with this game? You'll get through it in the end.
Yeah, no, and the Quest, man. I mean, people might criticize it because, like, oh, dude, all it's getting is ports from other platforms. But damn, is it getting good ones? That's the thing. It is getting really good ones. This is a great game. This was one of the best PlayStation VR games of the entire year of 2019. And now it arrives on the Quest, and it's a damn near perfect port. It really is. What about the price? It's $24.99, but I think it's got a pretty good amount of content. Like, I'm playing through it and I'm like, this is actually taking a while. I'm going through all these different chapters. I know the price is maybe a little bit higher than some people would like to pay, but it really is a quality piece of work. But you got to also concede the fact that it's more story. So if there might be a few people out there that just don't give much of a damn about story. They really want gameplay. I mean, it's kind of flip-flop normally, but I'm sure there's some people out there, it might not hit them the same way. But if you can appreciate quality story, especially quality voice work. Oh, one complaint I did have about the Quest version of this game, Gary, I don't know if you noticed this, but the audio was not like real 3D. Like, there would be a character talking, I'd hear it out of my right ear, but it wasn't positional in any way. And I'm not sure on PlayStation VR if it might have been. It might have had 3D positional audio. And the only reason I say that is because I noticed that it didn't when I was playing this, and it stood out to me. And I'm wondering if the only reason maybe it stood out to me is because the PSVR version did have legit 3D audio. But that was the only thing I noticed.
Yeah, I'm not too sure on that, to be honest. I didn't notice that, and I've played through around about four or five scenes on the Quest. So yeah, I didn't notice it. But then again, when I think about it, maybe I played the PSVR version. It was just the sound was just coming out the TV. I think I might have done that because my daughter and I were sort of sharing the experience, so we could both hear what was going on as well. So maybe that's why I didn't notice it as much. Somebody did ask how long is the game, and yes. Oh, Iron Root said it's 3 or 4 hours, and I think it probably is. I can't remember exactly how long it took me to go through, but yeah, that seems about right to me.
Yeah, and that's a decent length. It's not like a 1 hour quickie kind of event. It does take a little while to get through. And if you get stuck on some of these puzzles, it might take you 5-6 hours. So yeah, I'm impressed. I really enjoyed it. I continue to be impressed with the Quest. Just overall, I mean, I know there's a watering down. Actually, why don't we talk about this right now? Because I think you got a brief chance to play this. I also got a brief chance to play this. I am super late to the party to the Under Presents. but I've always heard so many good things about this. Now it's on the Quest. It originally arrived on the Quest. You could only get it on the Quest for a while. It's also now on the Oculus Rift. And Gary, one quick little tidbit I got to say about this is I kind of want to stop playing it on the Quest and I actually want to switch over to the Rift for this one. And the reason why is because the simplistic graphics, like really simplistic in certain areas of this game where I'm almost noticing too much of a watering down quest kind of a thing. And so I kind of do want to try it on the Rift to just see maybe slightly improved graphics. Did you notice this at all when you were playing this for your quick little half-hour sample?
Well, I've only played it on the Quest, so I've only got that comparison to make really. But yeah, I think yeah, the graphics are quite simplistic, but very reminiscent of their other game, Virtual Reality as well. But just talking about this, so there's a part of me when I'm playing this, and I've played about 30 minutes of it altogether, and it's to me, it's sort of a little bit too surreal for me to get a lot out of at the moment. Um, I don't think it's bad, and I enjoyed Virtual Reality, which was also a very surreal kind of game, really. But the advantage Virtual Reality had over this, in my mind, is that each one of those things was like a little bite-sized taste of surrealism, and then you move on to something else in a radically different environment. With the Underpresents, it's more of a cohesive experience, which is surreal all the way through, but the tone maintains the same level, at least from what I've played. And it could change later on. Hope it does really. But I've got to say, I'm not too sure about this one.
Yeah, no, this I think this is an acquired taste. I think you're like I'm playing the same thing because you know what? My expectations for this off the effing charts because I loved virtual reality and then also all I've heard is people rant and rave about this game and people love this game. And you know what? I see glimpses of it when you're in the mud, you're in that like mud field. Did you get to that mud field where there's like these bottles in the ground and you pull the bottles out and you're holding them up? It shows you in one of the scenes here where you're holding up a bottle and as you move it around, you're like peering into a completely
Oh
different
yeah.
world. Okay. Yeah, that was cool because I was grabbing these bottles and I was looking through it and I'm like, oh, I'm peering into these different worlds. They did a very good job of that. It is really weird. There's good voice acting with the sounds. I noticed I was watching a conversation in this game where I'm looking through a bottle and I'm moving the bottle around and I'm looking at the conversation from like different angles, like an overhead, like I'm a bird or something that's watching these people talk. And I believe the voices were like it was 3D sound, and so I noticed. So that was pretty cool. So there's some good presentation here. Incredibly simplistic though. A lot of the backgrounds just ultra simplistic, and that's why I do think I want to try to play the rest of this on the Rift. Also, I was in a multiplayer. Like there was some other person in the game with me. Did you ever notice like other people in the game with you?
Yeah, so that is one of the interesting things about it, isn't it? So yeah, certain sections, if you don't get, well, certain sections you actually have to play through a couple of times in order to get through them because you'll play through a part and then is this a spoiler? Is this a spoiler what I'm saying
I
here? I
don't.
don't
We
know.
dude, we
Hopefully
don't know
not.
what's going on, and we both only played like a half an hour of it. So I mean, you know.
No, well, there's a couple of sections that I've played so far where you have to go through the into the room, do an action, and then you'll once the timer finishes,
Yeah.
then you'll be sent back out of that room and you'll go back in. But when you go back in, you'll see a previous version of yourself doing these actions, and there's certain parts in the game where you have to have that in order to get through to the next stage because you have to do two things at
Did
once.
you play Gary?
And
Did you play Transpose? Remember Transpose?
yeah, I
It's
did.
similar
Yeah,
to
yeah,
that, like
I
where you're
did.
seeing multiple versions of yourself doing things, you know. And so, like, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
understand what's going on there, really.
No, there's well, it's like multiple versions of yourself, but also if you play it, because you can play it single player or you can play it, I think it defaults as multiplayer, but you can go in there and then you'll see somebody else appear alongside you where they can do the roles that you otherwise would have to be doing yourself. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting things with it. It's difficult. Like, there's no clear thread that's pulling me through this. It's so weird that it's difficult to grab hold of anything that's really like narratively. It doesn't make sense to me at all what's going on, and maybe that's because I'm so early on. Maybe it's not supposed to make sense.
Yeah, it's like it's almost one of these like highbrow artsy farts. You know what I mean? It's like you've got to like adapt to what they're delivering, and you just got to roll with it. And I think
Yeah.
this is like over time, I think you're going to see probably the genius of this game if you're able to stick with it long enough. I definitely want to see more of it, but it wasn't necessarily, I don't know. I've got to try it on the Rift. I definitely want to try it on the Rift. I am Roots in chat was asking me if I saw any live actors. That's one of the things about this game. So it's developed by Tender Claws, but it's in association with Piehole, which is actually like this group of actors, and they're going to be doing live performances. It depends on if you get into the game where that happens, but there's actually going to be live performances, and I don't know. Would there be something that would pop on the screen that would make me know that? Because I mean, I had somebody talking to me and they said reach out and grab my hand and stuff, but I was assuming that's just the character that's created within the game. I don't think it was a live actor, but I don't know. So I'm guessing, would the live actors be like another one of these avatars and they would just start talking to you? Because the avatar, I saw another person come into my game and they were doing things and moving around, but they didn't talk to me. They were just moving around doing stuff.
Yeah, just on that point quickly as well, Anthony. Like, do you know if, because I could see other people in there when I was playing multiplayer, but if you try waving to them or anything, they don't seem to respond. Maybe they can't see you. I don't know. Is it?
Yeah.
I don't know how it works
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. This is one where we'd probably have to get into whatever the community is for, or watch someone else's video that explains what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I'm not exactly sure, but I know a lot of people really love it, and it's interesting visuals, dramatically different backgrounds and stuff. What about this mechanic that they're using where you grab you grab, it's like this like teleport where you grab and you're like throwing yourself forward. That was a little bit weird, unique, but it also had like a little style to it, how it like warps the
Yeah.
world, you know. So yeah, pretty interesting. I definitely will play more of it and have more to say about that. Okay, Gary, I wanted to talk to you about something on a completely different tangent. Okay, so do you remember back in the days of like 3D TVs? This is something I talked with Mike about, with Mike from Virtual Reality Oasis. Is like back in the days of 3D TVs, we were sold on this idea of everything going 3D. Like our movies would be 3D, sporting events would be 3D, maybe even a sitcom that we would watch would be 3D, or Survivor, or a TV show, or something like that, or Dancing with the Stars, that would be 3D, and the video games would be 3D. And some of us had PlayStation 3s at that time, and you could actually buy 3D games, and you had your goggles and all that. So I remember that world, and the reason I'm unraveling all of that is because in VR, we've mostly just been focused with games, and then with like experiences that are very similar to games, but where's all the video content? Like, where's the concerts? And I'm sure there's stuff out there, but to me, Gary, it's unimpressive. Where is the next generation stuff? Like kind of what this little Intel sample is showing you, volumetric video with voxels and all this stuff. Where's our next gen video that we were promised with light fields and all of that?
Yeah, it's just the technology's just not there yet, is it? I mean, I suppose that's the thing. Light fields is exciting, and I remember talking about this numerous times on VR Roundtable, where we were talking about like the light field technology and how it could change things in quite a big way. But you hear sporadic things coming out in the news about light fields and the advancements that they make, but we're not seeing anything tangible really, apart from like the odd little demo that you can do in a current gen VR headset, which is not really the ideal or practical way to experience this going forward. But I mean, the problem is like with live, like it comes down to the fact that at the moment what we're getting is 360 video, which is rubbish, isn't it? I mean, it's rubbish. 360 video, it's just not good enough, and that's part of the problem. But when we get to a point like what you're showing here in this video, I don't think I've seen this actually, but if we get to a point where we can experience this kind of stuff, that would be great. But again, it's for what they're showing here in this video, it's going to take light fields because they're sort of zooming in where cameras can't even get to, and rendering it in a certain
Well,
way,
this is
which
this is this okay, so this was on the CES 2018. So this is 2 years
okay.
ago, Gary, and this was when Intel did their CES. It was all voxels all the time. Like this is all they talked about is this world of voxels. And so the idea is like Intel has this big giant sound stage facility that they've built, this really big thing that is all set up for this like advanced stuff for filming things, but it's got to be within a certain like it could only be within a certain amount of area, right? But then they also want to do it at different sporting venues where they surround the entire stadium in cameras, and basically they use this system where all these cameras are capturing things from all different angles, and then it turns it into basically like voxels, like individual
Mm.
voxels of video, so they can show you. You could walk, you could step into the video, you could walk into the because it's reconstructing all the video information into like a three-dimensional thing. I mean, that's supposedly the theory here, right? So this is the volumetric video dream that we've all dreamed about. And that's right, Gary. We've heard talk about this. We've heard stories about this. It's always gotten us excited. But what actual demos have we've ever seen? And the question I'd have is, I wish I could talk to somebody like somebody at Intel or Qualcomm or somebody that really understands this stuff. And my number one question for them is, why can't I see a crappy version of this right now? Is it because of the size of the video? Do we absolutely have to have 5G modems in the headset to even see this? Is that what it is? There's something that's holding this up.
Yeah, I think, well, I think the capture technology is one thing, and to render this, to turn everything into voxels and then create this scene, the yeah, I think somebody mentioned in chat as well, actually, the processing power is going to have to be quite high. These things, they're all interesting stuff. To me, it's like it's too far away to even like get that excited about. But your comparison there, like when you started this discussion, Anthony, about 3D TVs, and um, I suppose in a way this could be a partial way to get a sort of mainstream excited for VR, or at least VR related technology, if they see something like this. And if you could get a demo of like a sports, a football match or something like that, and just mainstream people could see what is possible within a VR headset. But this to me, this seems like a long way off still. I don't see the infrastructure for the technology
Yeah,
there.
Gary, do you remember that thing? It was Joshua somebody. I can't remember what it was anymore, but
Mm.
on PlayStation VR, the violin guy and
Yeah, Joshua
Joshua
Bell
Bell,
was it?
yeah.
Joshua.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I probably don't have that video on this PC actually. I've switched PCs and I only have like half of my videos, but on that little sampler, did you ever try that on PlayStation VR, the Joshua Bell thing?
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was great. Yeah, it was great. But they did that. It was painstaking the way they created that
Okay, but
scene.
wait. So
Um,
Sony, right, has Sony Music. Like, don't they own Sony Music? Like, why wouldn't they take that technology and use it with like one of the biggest mainstream stars so that it looks like 5 feet away from you, Taylor Swift, I don't know, whoever it is, whatever your star is that you want to see 5 feet away from you, bam, the person is there, they're singing, their body looks like they're there. I mean, it looked pretty good. I would like it was a lot of smoke and mirrors, but it was pretty damn good smoke and mirrors, and I'd love to see that with like a mainstream artist that I really knew and care about. and like see them on a regular basis and have these things advertised and promoted. We've seen none of this. Like there, like where's the
Mm.
3D, the VR music videos? Do you remember that one music video in VR? What was it called? Um, it was like
Halle- oh, I was going to say Hallelujah because they did that with Lightfields, but no, that's not the one you're
it
thinking
starts
of, I
with
don't
like an
think.
S. It's like Stomp or something like that, or I don't know what it is. But there was a music video that was in VR, not like a mainstream artist. It's just like some weird background music, but the music, it was like these things were slamming down and breaking. I know you know what I'm talking about. It's in the early days of VR, but
Mm.
I can't think of the name of it. Um, but when I saw that music video, I watched that music video and I was like, okay, all music videos are going to be in VR now. This is the way to do freaking music videos. Like you're in the freaking song with things happening all around you, perfectly synced to the music. Like, why don't we have like more music videos? Do you think it's
We will.
okay? Go ahead.
I think we will. No, I think we will. It's just that at the moment there's not enough. There's just not the install base in order for people to try and get Taylor Swift or somebody in to do this necessarily. Or they could do, and they do it in a limited way. You know, we've seen VR things from like mainstream pop stars and that kind of stuff, but they've not done it in a major way because the install base just isn't there at the moment. I suppose it goes back to getting more people into VR before we see this thing.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I mean, okay, yeah, sure. We don't have the install base to get like a huge star, but they've got, but just do experiments. Like, I mean, one experiment was the Joshua Bell thing, but we can do a few more of those, and there's much lower level stars. Like Sony has them in their own catalog. They should be able to get some of them to do it just out of their contract to Sony. See, the problem is Sony as a company, and this has plagued them over their entire career. One section of Sony, it might as well be like an outside company. They
Yeah,
might as well be totally
it's separate.
unrelated.
Yeah,
Oh, it's bothersome.
yeah. No, I understand what you're saying, but yeah, you're right. Like Sony operate in that way where they do separate their entertainment side, their gaming side. It's all done in a separate way with Sony for some reason, but it seems to work for them in some ways, but maybe not in others. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I wonder if like you could go to some kind of GDC event somewhere and like go into some kind of back room and put on a headset, and I want to see the future of what this like real volumetric video crap is. You would think they'd be able to create just a 10-second demo. Like if it's like, oh, 10 seconds is 100 gigs. Okay, fine. Just give me 10 seconds. I just want to see what it looks like. Yeah.
I think they'll do it. I think that this is going to happen at some point, but not yet. And it's going to probably be more like when we get AR glasses or combination VR AR glasses. Because do you remember, like we've spoken about light fields before, but it's not just the light field capture that we've spoken about. It's the light field displays as well, which is really exciting stuff. These light field displays, which is probably going to be like the dream thing for AR glasses at some point. But it just feels like it's that kind of stuff is just still a way away.
Yeah, yeah. It's though that's why I'm interested in taking VR farther, you know. I want to see VR go
Mm.
farther. I mean, there's so many. This is an exciting field though. If you want to be in a hobby, this is a great hobby to be in because there's so many different little aspects of this that can improve by such huge leaps and bounds, and you just have no idea where it's coming from. Like there could be a breakthrough in video that changes everything. There could be a breakthrough in travel, virtual travel. You know, there could be breakthroughs in different categories of this. The whole avatar thing, like the whole defy distance thing, that might actually be that might be the real key. You know, we've got this coronavirus thing going on. What if there really was a true pandemic where people had to stay isolated for 5 months until it finally dissipated or whatever? It's not too far away, these advanced avatars. The Qualcomm thing that I'm interested in, 7 cameras and 3 of them are inside the headset, and they're being used for eye tracking, but they're also being used to track cheekbone muscles and to track your lip movements as well. And so there is some stuff that is starting to trickle through. And like, have you been as impressed with like big screen or alt space or rec room or some of the multiplayer stuff that we have where you are having these experiences and there's like five little things floating around in the room and you hear people talking? Like, it isn't doing anything for me yet. I'm just what about you?
No. No, I do. I think I agree with you on that. It's not doing a lot for me at the moment, and that's one of the parts where I am interested in VR going forward in terms of the social aspect for because before I got VR, I went into VR chat on desktop and just talked to people, and then I went into alt space when I first got VR, and it was good. I like that. I like that aspect of just talking to people within these worlds. But you need things to do as well. And yeah, the avatar problem is just an inherent problem at the moment. And again, I suppose it's like inverse kinematics, getting more points of tracking and that kind of stuff. If we get to a point where we can track our bodies in a more realistic way within VR, do all of these other little innovations that they're doing in terms of tracking your facial expressions and that kind of stuff, then it might make it more compelling. I still like the idea of alt space. I still like going in there, and I still like rec room to a certain extent as well. I like the idea of these things, but when I'm in there, I'm just not compelled to stay in there for that long, really.
I want to see more of like a real human body. I mean, I want to see our bodies get into VR in a better way. And actually, you know what? Hold on, I can throw on a little sampler of something. Let me just pop this on the screen. So, the whole Qualcomm XR2 thing. One of the things that they had these people sample. This is like last December 5th. Was there's a company called Spatial that does. No, I can't find it. Why am I not finding it? Let's see here. Hold on a second. But they do. It's like putting people in the same spatial. I just searched for it and now it's not finding it. Crap. Never mind. But yeah, I do believe like the avatars have to improve by leaps and bounds. I just seeing a little thing that stands like this, just a little cartoon
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
and you hear the person's voice. It's cool, but it's not good enough for me. But there are people out there that actually use that and they're like, oh, this is the next world. I'm in there every night. VR chat or the Wave VR. I just don't think we're there yet, but I see the beginnings of it.
It's the beginnings, yeah. And I think as well, like when you look at something like Ready Player One, where you've got all these meaningful interactions with other avatars within this virtual world, that makes sense to me. But when you go into alt space and you've got a lot of people that look almost identical because they're using the same avatars, and they can't really do a lot expression wise, it's difficult. I think you've got, because as humans we've got different layers of communication that we have, like body language and facial expressions and things like that. And I think that is important, probably more important than I ever realized, because I thought I would just go into alt space and think this is incredible. I'm talking to somebody across the world and they're represented with this avatar, but it's not really like that.
Okay, check this out. In chat, I am Roots says, I don't need to see people's lips moving to enjoy hanging out, Anthony. It's about the people. But here's my argument to you, Roots, and I'll also say this to Gary as well. Dude, we've had I remember back in the 80s on our telephones, you could call three people up and you could have three people on your rotary telephone talking to each other. That technology has existed for a while, all right? This is just the VR version of having five people in the same room and you hear their voices. It's got to be way the hell better than that. All we're seeing these little things move around. We're seeing the head go up and down, and we're seeing it look at stuff, and we might see some hands floating around like this a little bit, but it's basically the virtual equivalent of like doing like a Skype call with like five people, but you're not even seeing the real people. Instead, you're just seeing a little computer animation. What I'm saying is we got to get to the point where we do have that body tracking, because Gary, you mentioned body language. Body language is like 73% of human communication or something like that. When you see somebody standing somewhere, just the way they're standing, if they're slumping to one side or the other, whether they have their pockets in their, I mean, their hands in their pockets, or their hands are free, or they're twiddling their hair, or whatever the hell they're doing, you can unravel so much information just looking at somebody standing somewhere. You can kind of tell what mood they're in. But we don't have that. We don't have that yet in VR. But I believe it's coming. I believe it's imminent. And I think the actual headsets themselves are capable of body tracking, looking down at our skeleton and using inverse kinematics with the points that they are tracking.
The other thing as well, it's not like to say that like alt space or something like that is completely meaningless at the moment, because I think it's good. I do like going in there, but it's more like just thinking of how much better it can be. Like I go into No Man's Sky, and multiplayer in No Man's Sky is really good, but you can't see enough. To your point, Anthony, like a body language and that kind of stuff, it will be so much better if you add all of these extra things in there. So it's not like it's meaningless or it's like got no value at all. I think current alt space or rec room, it does have value. It's just not where I think it's getting baseline. I suppose we're going back to a baseline. It's not got to the baseline yet.
Oh, I am Roots in chat is saying they want to twiddle their hair without people knowing. I know I love twiddling my hair. But he's saying, and then Iron Faviar is 73%. That's for Italians. That's funny. But no, yeah. Well, I've heard the argument a lot, Gary, that like, I don't want to be me in VR. I want to be somebody else. Like the reason I'm using VR is to get away from me. I hate me, you know. So it's like, what about that argument? My argument to that argument is like, have you never seen any of these animated movies where you can instantly tell who the voice actor of the movie is because you see their face, even though they're like a purple unicorn? You can tell who their face is. You can tell who the actor is. So even if we had to do that, so you could be a different person, but we have your facial movements and your basic facial structure, so we kind of understand who you are. And then we know where you're putting your hands and how you're slumping your shoulders, or if you're standing on your tippy toes, or, you know, we get all that visual information with the body. I think it's mission critical. That's why there's so many exciting steps for VR to take. It is a hell of a hobby. Gary, one question I did have on here that I never did ask you is, since you've like left VR Roundtable and you've had more downtime, you haven't had to be on anybody's schedule about what game to play. I know you've been playing a lot more flat stuff. Would there be any possibility, Gary, that you would just get tired of VR and go back to the flat world, a world with no friction other than microtransactions and all the other crap that they do in the flat world?
Mm-hmm. No, it's not. I mean, it's not that I've been playing that much flat, really. I've played a little bit. I've bought a few things on like PS4 on the sales that have been happening, but I've not really played a lot of games anyway. But no, VR is the passion for me. If I get spare time, I'll be playing VR. I think like, in terms of flat, I suppose it's more retro. You know, I spoke about this because I'm going to be doing like an arcade cabinet and that kind of stuff. So that's sort of my little project, and I like just messing around with retro stuff, because a lot of the retro, especially arcade retro games, you can just duck in and out of them very quickly. You don't need to invest that much time in them, really. I did buy God of War on PS4. I've played a little bit of that. It's a good game, but I've not progressed too far with it. But I suppose really once I've got everything sorted in this room, then I'll be going back into VR. And any spare time I get, it will be in VR, really. Yeah.
Here's a question. Since leaving VR Roundtable, what is the longest consecutive number of days you didn't touch VR? Like, did you ever have like 3 weeks off, a month? I don't know.
Yes, I did. So Before I packed my Valve Index away, I hadn't used it for quite a long time before that. I went in a few days before, played The Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners, and that kind of stuff. But I hadn't been in. I played a little bit more No Man's Sky actually as well, but I didn't really use it a great deal. Um, but I tell you what, when you come out of not using it for a couple of weeks and then go back in, it's like starting from scratch again. It's like resetting yourself. You're amazed by everything that you see. So honestly, I'd probably recommend doing that for people that are getting a bit disillusioned with VR or something like that, because it really hit me going back in. I thought this is absolutely incredible. But yeah, so really it's been other than that. So I suppose what is the length of time? Probably, yeah, 3 weeks. I would say I've spent 3 weeks without touching a VR headset at one point. Now that's not happening. I'm playing the Quest quite a lot, and as soon as this room's done, I'll be back in the Valve Index.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, speaking of like Valve Index and Quest, I mean, I don't know if it's like this in the UK as well, but like here in America, like if I was just to say, you know what, I don't really need my Valve Index that bad, I could probably sell it right now for a tidy little extra sum of money. Same thing with the Oculus Quest. Did you ever like think any thoughts like, man, there's such a shortage right now. I could just live with my Rift S for a while and slum it.
Uh, I've not got a Rift S anymore. I sent that
Oh.
back and I've not picked up a new one. But yeah, no, I get your point, because yeah, I see these posts on on Reddit where people are selling them. I think over here, I was looking at the sold listings on eBay just out of interest, and they are going for around about £500 more
Wow.
than they are selling for from new. So at least a couple have sold for that, I believe, on eBay. So, but no, it's not. I've got no interest in
You know
doing
what,
that now.
Gary? I've actually thought about doing it not to try to like make a ton of money, but because I want newer controllers when I buy the Valve Index again. But my problem is like I'd only want to be without the Valve Index for a maximum of like 2 months. But I've lived without my Valve Index practically for 2 months because The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, Gary.
Yeah.
So I played that on my Valve Index. I know you don't have the problem that I do, but dude, the glare bothered me so much that I started exclusively playing Saints and Sinners on my CV1, that old busted CV1 technology from so long ago, like not even Rift S, going back to the CV1, using it for weeks, my Valve Index just collecting dust for like 3 weeks.
It's really weird how some things affect, because I struggle when I hear you say stuff like that. How like the God rays on the CV1 don't bother you as much as the glare on the index, or in certain experiences at least. For me, it's the exact opposite. Sometimes I have to like actually look for the glare in the index just to notice it. Once I look for it, I can see it, but it's really not a big deal for me at all. On your index controllers, Anthony, do yours click in all directions, or you got
No,
the
they
first?
don't.
No.
And there's
Have you
and
thought about
the
RMA in
RMA,
them?
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've thought about it. I just like it's like okay, I should have did it. I should have did it that right then, when I was doing the whole thing. I mean when I was just like playing Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, I should have RMA'd it right
yeah,
then because that would have been a 3 week period I could have lived without him. But nah, I was always kind of waiting. I kind of didn't want to do it right away because I wanted to make sure that I got like whatever their final redesign would be. And so let all this stock clear out a long time. I should have like a 1 year warranty on the thing, right? So I just got to make
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I've thought about it, but now Half Life Alex is coming up. But I almost thought, should I just sell my index? I'll just buy another one. But no, I probably won't do that. All right, Gary. Well, I got to tell you, awesome again having you on the show. Certainly, probably 100 other questions I could have asked you, and I do have a whole bunch of other questions. But it was fun catching up with Gary. I did this thing. I tried to grab an image of catching up with Depeche Mode and turning into catching up with Reckoner VR, and putting Gary's head on all the heads of the different people in the band. And I just could never get it to look right, so I ultimately abandoned it. But yeah, Gary, it was awesome having you on, and definitely would like to chat with you again. Maybe after you've played Half Life Alex a bunch and gotten back into some more games once you get your room all completely dialed in.
Yeah, can't wait. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. It's been good to catch up. One of the things that I've missed actually by not doing VR Roundtable is just having a chat to people about VR, because one of my motivations for starting VR Roundtable with you, Anthony, was the fact that I didn't really have that in real life. So I did enjoy that on a weekly basis, talking about VR to people. And that's one of the things I've missed by not doing VR Roundtable. So this has been a great opportunity to catch up. Yeah, so thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, you still got your Reckoner VR channel. You can always just pull out your iPhone and just do a vlog every once in a while, and let people know what's going on. Could be
Yeah,
cool.
you never
All right.
know.
Well, anyway, folks, that's basically going to do it for our show today. Thank you so much for joining us. And once again, you can check us out next Thursday, 5 p.m., back on YouTube. And of course, Sundays, normally it is 11:30 a.m. on Twitch, but we had a special earlier show today. But yeah, thanks so much. Sorry to everybody in chat. Wasn't really reading too much of your guys' comments. I'll definitely check them out later. Concentrating on our little conversation here. Was wonderful having Gary aboard. And like I said, I'll see everybody on Thursday. All right, so now I got to figure out how I stop the stream here. Okay, we'll see you guys. Take it easy. Bye.